Hi, guys. Welcome to Real Food Recovery. We have an episode today that I think you're really going to like. But first of all, I must say hello to Jamie. How's it going, sister?
Hi, very good to see you. Very, very interested and intrigued by the title, right? The topic of our podcast today, all about the blue zones. It's something
Mhm.
that it really, the research around it and the patterns that are seen in these blue zones across the globe really can't be underestimated or
Right,
kind of swept under the rug anymore. So I'm excited
right.
that we're diving.
Yeah, it fits great, perfectly with what we are doing, what we're about. And for those of you familiar with Blue Zones on Netflix, you know that there are pockets of areas where there is a high population of people living to 100. So we go on this journey of examining the lives of those with this uber health in hopes of gleaning wisdom to impart to our own lives. Of course, that's what we all want. But before we get started on that, I want to talk about Real Food Recovery's Tree of Life that we base our recovery program on and how closely we come in alignment with these centurions. We have four core foundational branches that we feel need to be in place for success. That is food or food prep, sleep, movement, and spirituality. So whatever form that looks like for you when it comes to spirituality, we're not pushing religion down anybody's throat. It's just trying to get people to connect to something bigger than themselves when they're in a place that they need comfort.
Agreed. And I think that's really important, right? That we talk about our branches because they do align. They do align so closely. And I wanted to, just before I jumped into our branches, I wanted to make sure that I referenced the name of the documentary, the full name of the documentary, in case anyone is looking. The documentary is that we're referring to is all about the blue zones, but it's actually not called the blue zones.
I didn't know that.
It's called Live to 100. So it's
I
on
did
Netflix.
not know that.
It's called Live to 100, and it's got a subtitle, Secrets of the Blue Zones. But just so you know, if you're looking for it, you're looking for the name Blue Zones, you won't see it as the leading name. You'll see it as Live to 100.
I
So
bet you know what I did is type Blue Zones in the search bar for
yeah,
Netflix, and it probably just brought me right there. And I glossed
it,
right over that the title is different.
and just in case somebody you might have already seen it in your Netflix list or recommendation and not realize what it was. So there you go.
Mm-hmm.
But the branches that we build our cornerstones on, again, they're aligned perfectly with the findings and the research that they're getting in the blue zones, or getting from the blue zones. Community connection, stress management, connection with and service to others, self-talk and thought life, emotional awareness, integration with our inner family, personal values, writing practices, and then we have things like education, right? So not only educating ourselves formally, but also informally, and addictive substances and processes, understanding how those affect us and our health, and then also our sense of purpose. So, and that I think is really the number one thing that I see in the blue zones across the board is a strong sense of purpose. And it doesn't
Right.
mean that they get up and run the world each day. It doesn't mean that they're,
Their world. They run
yeah,
their world.
it's exactly. It's really just a strong sense of purpose in their little corner of the world.
Mhm.
And the last one that I want to talk about, our branch that is important, and I see this across the blue zones, is creativity, right? So the
Mhm.
people that live to 100 or more, they're being creative, not just because they're artistic per se, or they're talented in another way creatively, but they truly are creative in how they live, how they work, how they socialize, literally how they set up their homes. They're very creative. They're creative in how they move from their home to their town, back home, the way they travel, the way that they get their groceries or other daily needs met. They're creative.
Mhm.
They're creative with how they spend time with family. They're creative in how they, access nature at their fingertips. All of it is
Mhm.
aligned. So we know really from watching the series that there's no doubt that we have these areas covered, from a real food recovery standpoint. So we're happy to say that. but we think that it really helps us to drive some of these branches home so that we can connect the dots for you between how our branches, if you're living them now, whatever age you are. I'm guessing there's probably not a lot of centenarians listening to RFR. But if you are,
Because they've already figured it out.
put it in the comments. Put it in the comments if you're a centenarian listening to Real Food Recovery. And also we'll probably have you on as a guest. Because we're gonna want to learn from you. But I would say for sure, like there's so much crossover here, and we want our members and our listeners to have an understanding of how they can get to be a centenarian, even if they're only 30 or 40 or 50.
Mhm. So, right, I agree with all that. And I love how the show starts out asking how many years will we get out of our body. The irony of this opening scene talks about billions spent in the diet industry, followed by the question, is it working? As we know, 2/3 of our society is overweight or obese. With that number rising, especially in children, we have an epidemic on our hands. We have shared before that 1.6 million people die every year from diet-related disease. These are optional deaths. This all leads to the conclusion that we are leaving good years on the table.
Mhm. And again, I think the real crux of the issue is that people don't truly know what they need to do to take care of themselves from the
Right.
big holistic picture.
Mhm.
And when we look at, the folks that we work with at Real Food Recovery or the folks that we meet out in the world, a lot of times there's so much overloaded information, folks don't know where to start. Certainly from the food perspective, it's tons of confusion, which is exactly what the food industry wants, right? Tons of confusion.
Mhm.
They don't market
Mhm.
health, they don't market solutions, they market confusion. Let's just be very clear about that.
Well put.
Anything in the food industry
Mhm.
is out there to market confusion. And they, we talk about, okay, how do we manage stress? Like, what do we do? How do we figure out our stress load and how to live with it or reduce it? There's also a lot of information and misinformation out there about it. So folks get overwhelmed, which increases the stress. Sleep. People are confused about how much they need, how many times a week to work out or not work out, rest or not rest, for how long. I just heard today on an interview, somebody was saying that they can only work out for 15 minutes, and that is the cap before your body feels like it's being chased by a tiger. And absolutely, you should not work out for more than 15 minutes at a time, as far as an increased heart rate. Again, just very interesting, right? One more opinion added to the mix of probably hundreds and hundreds of opinions out there about the timing of exercise and the intensity of the exercise that we do. And when we think about, when we go to the gym, if we go to a gym, or if we just do it outside, if we're supposed to, just do functional movement versus, formal, organized classes or lifting, how do you create a spiritual connection? What is a spiritual connection? Is it something that I have to be religious, or does it something that comes from inside of me? And is it what was taught to me as a kid? And what happens if that doesn't work for me anymore? There's so much confusion, and questions that people don't even get to that level of spiritual, right, questioning, because they're stuck up here figuring out what to eat and how to keep their weight off.
Right.
And then if you think about relationships, right? So many of us are struggling with relationships that might not be optimal, right? And it could be a family of origin thing. It could be a current family situation. It could be relationships with our kids. And when we think about how we struggle in relationships, it's hard. It's hard to figure out what the best tools are to have relationships that are life-giving instead of stress promoting.
Yeah.
So again, we're going to cover all of that today and hopefully help you create your habits that can lead to sort of those blue zone outcomes for you.
Yeah, I love that. And I agree with everything you said. And we want to focus on learning how to live versus prevent death. At Real Food Recovery, our mission was born out of love and a true desire to help people find their way to health, not just physical health, but emotional and spiritual health as well, because we understand that all these components work together to create this rich, balanced life. This plays right into the main point of Blue Zones. These people are living to 100 at the highest rates in the world, and they are doing it without trying. Their vibrant life is simply, it's just a natural byproduct of the way they're living. It's just their natural lifestyle. This is just falling into place. So I just think that's really interesting.
Yeah, I agree. So the first place that they visit in the Blue Zone sort of deep dive is in Okinawa, Japan. It has the highest, longest lived population in the world, and it's even higher it's even higher in longevity in women there.
Mhm.
They have a warmer climate, so they have more growing seasons.
Yeah.
And they start out interviewing this 101-year-old, very, very healthy, vital woman who is singing, playing guitar, playing games with her family. And again, she talks about the importance of having fun, not getting angry, making others happy. And that's so interesting, right? Because she ties laughter to longevity
Mhm.
and to that connection that comes from, talking and
Mhm.
laughing and sharing that oxytocin with each other.
Mhm. Yeah, I loved seeing her. She was so full of life and surrounded by so much love and family. When I was watching this scene, it made me think of how our branches aligned to her values. What stood out to me was our connection branch as well as our stress management branch. For me, when I'm connected to my family, it makes all the difference in the world. And when I'm not, it is a sadness that I have no words for. It's the difference of feeling connected and safe in this world versus feeling alone and isolated. And by the way, I firmly believe that we all get to choose what family looks like in each of our lives. We are
Mhm.
not always born into these perfect families, but that doesn't mean we can't create our own set of loved ones. And of course, that ties right into the stress branch. This lady was filled with light and laughter, not taking the world too seriously, keeping things in perspective. So I'm curious what your thoughts are. If you think this is just a skill set or if you're born with this laid back persona. And a follow-up question to that, I really am curious to pick your brain about how important you think connection is in your life and keeping the stress management portion under control to live this big, beautiful life.
I think it is absolute connection is vital. It really, I've seen it. Uh, that's why the day that it was, March, what was it, March 13th or something? I forget the exact date in 2020 when the world just shut down.
Yeah.
What we all went to work that morning or all went about our lives that morning thinking it was another day, even though there's this sort of looming thing, this pandemic happening, but it wasn't like a real thing until all of a sudden that afternoon, there were announcements across the globe.
Yeah.
The world was shut down, or your country, your town, your life was shut down and you were sent home. And I remember thinking, in addition to thinking about, okay, how am I going to get the things I need to live? I immediately thought this is going to be a huge mental health crisis, a
Mhm.
huge mental health crisis, because you're pulling people away from each other. And
Yeah.
this will be have a massive impact on people's mental health. And
Mhm.
that is exactly what we're seeing. We're seeing that again and again. And we're feeling the effects of it still 4 years later. And I would say the acute effects, right? And they're showing up in all other ways, showing up in disagreements and disconnections and all kinds of strife around the globe. But if we think that it's just happening today, we're wrong. Uh,
Mhm.
so it was set up for us really when the digital age and then really compounded for COVID. And I know in my life, it's been a hard thing to disconnect from that in-person connection. And I always enjoy being around people, whether they're family, blood family or not, right?
Mhm.
It's being around people is lifeblood to me.
Mhm.
And I just feel better when I do. So the other thing that they're famous for in Okinawa is their diet, and their diet is made up of nutrient-dense foods. And I want to be clear about the geography of Okinawa. So Okinawa is not on mainland Japan. Okinawa is an island 32 hours southwest of Japan.
Do you have that in your brain?
I just Googled it because I was curious. And so it is, people think, oh, how is this like zone, inside Japan? And if you think about Japan, maybe you think about Tokyo, you might think about the industrial revolution that has hit Japan like it's hit everywhere else. You wouldn't expect to find a blue zone there. You're right, you won't. It's 38 hours southwest across the Pacific on an island called Okinawa. So very important. They're not only are they connected with each other, they're sourcing nutrient dense foods for their health, and they are really truly connected to the earth and to the farming that they need to get their meals and food supply. And if you think about, what is a nutrient dense food, it's truly having high vitamin and mineral content in relation to its weight. So when we think about what that is, it might be vegetables and fruits and whole grains and anything that comes from the earth, or comes from high nutrient dense foods from animals as well. And these foods avoid saturated fat, right? And it certainly avoids added processed sugars and sodium. And when compared to ultra processed foods that are super high in calories, right, but provide very little nutritional value.
I wanted to, when you're talking about stress management and the world shutting down a few years ago during COVID, I remember that day you're talking about, and we were driving somewhere, and my daughter, my oldest daughter, called. Her husband is the head baseball coach at University of Central Oklahoma, and you could almost watch the map just going to close, 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 close. And when it got to us, we're in the middle of the country, not quite middle, but the Midwest here. He had to go in and tell all of his senior guys on the baseball team, season's over. The seniors, that's it. You will never get this chance again. And these guys, this is the world to them, especially at that age, and how devastated he was to have to tell, oh gosh, I'm getting choked up. But those kids were just devastated by that. And that was also about the same time that my younger daughter was having a baby, and I had driven her to the hospital, and they're like, you got to get out. You can't come in here. So it's what you were talking about with the stress management combined with the connection to people. It just it ratcheted up the significance and the layers to that. So anyway,
Yes.
I'm a blubber. I don't know why I get so choked up over that stuff, but it's just so painful.
It's
and
traumatic.
you can't.
It was traumatic. I'm sorry. That whole situation was absolutely traumatic. It threatened all of our Maslow's hierarchy of needs in one day. It threatened all of them across the entire country.
And those are things you can't get back. You can't redo your senior year of college. You can't rehab your mother. I mean, I guess she could have more babies, but probably wouldn't be worth it to, I missed out on a beautiful experience that I wish I would have had the opportunity to have. But anyway, I got off off of what we're talking about in our branches, but I do love this focus on nutrient dense food. And I remember that Chef AJ was saying that we don't gain weight because of how much food we eat. We gain weight because of how many calories we consume. She talks about volume eating and being aware of the calories per pound of food she eats. For instance, she starts her day with a pound of vegetables for breakfast, and that might be vegetables are like 100 calories per pound, but huge amounts of volume, right? So your tummy feels those stretch receptors, and the brain can calm down by knowing that it's full. So a big bang for your buck there, whereas a potato may be closer to 400 calories a pound. So just be aware of those types of things. So shifting your calories to these nutrient dense foods allows you plenty of volume without feeling deprived. I know I eat a pound of salad mid-morning with oftentimes a half a cup of raw unsalted almonds and a drizzle of balsamic, or sometimes I've recently even just converted to just eating it plain, and I am coming to really enjoy these simple flavors of these raw vegetables. They taste sweeter to me. I know my palate is changing and I really feel good about what I'm doing. And I know that I'm getting all these raw vegetables. It makes me feel a little more uppity during the day because it makes me feel so good on the inside. And I'm taking advantage of that volume eating that lets my brain know to relax. It's getting plenty. It doesn't feel deprived. But besides all that great fiber, and I don't know about you, but as a female, postmenopausal female, fiber is hugely important
Yeah.
in my diet, and my insides are very happy with me when I keep that fiber high, 25 to 30 grams a day of fiber. Do you pay attention to that calorie density and nutritional density?
Well, I'm in a phase of my life that I am eating differently than I was before, so I can do some healing that I need to do on some longer term issues. So for me, because it's related to my adrenals and thyroid and other internal organs that are all regulating my system, I don't have that nutrient density. My nutrient density focus has shifted from, eating the rainbow to looking at the nutrient density of animal meat right now, and believe it or not, fat. So that's something that my nutrient density goals have shifted from, again, a rainbow of colors and foods to very specific foods, very short list of foods that are extremely high in nutrients. And they are also high, they also look at the mix of how I'm eating those foods. So that's fascinating, right? And then also learning how my body uses those foods. And making sure that my body runs as well as it can on those foods. So yeah, um it's shifted, but it doesn't really shift from the important parts.
And do you feel like that will change again in your lifetime when everything is healed?
We'll see what happens. I don't know. I haven't gotten any indication yet of that changing anytime soon, so we'll see how it goes. But in Okinawa, this is interesting, they also stop eating when they're 80% full,
Mhm.
along, of course, with the low calorie density foods. So you'll see them, usually, I think their most dense foods in Japan are their Japanese sweet potatoes, and the most calorie dense foods. And then maybe some of their rices or other starches. So again, they might have higher volume, lower calorie, and then a lot of nutrients from plants in their eating plan. And that appears to be working well for them. But this Haribachi Bu, which is the 80% full, is something that is, practiced widely there. It's just what people do. They stop at 80% full. So again, it's something to keep in mind if thinking about, hey, if you're pushing away from the table or ending your meal because your food is about to come up out of your mouth, it's probably eating too much, right? So you want to think about, what is fullness, and that really comes down to connecting
Huge.
with your body and being present while you're eating, checking in with yourself, and not looking at your plate as the indicator of fullness, but
Mhm.
listening to your body as the indicator of fullness.
Tell me,
Um,
oh, sorry.
no,
Go
I was
ahead.
also just going to add the Okinawans have a very low rate of heart disease there, very low
Mhm.
rates.
Makes sense. Can you tell me the name, what that term that you use? I'm not familiar with it. I've not heard
I
it
think I
before.
mispronounced. It's called Harry Hachibu, but I don't know how to spell it.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that to you. I would not ask you that. But that's so true. And so oftentimes you just said it, be aware as you're eating, because don't you find that the biggest problem is all of a sudden you're stuffed and you didn't even realize you were doing it?
Yes.
'Cause
Yes.
you're
Or you eat because you're looking at your plate. I don't know about you, but if I look at my plate and I think I have half a plate left, I think, well, I must be half full.
that's right. That's right. And if it's on my plate, I'm no quitter. I'm gonna
Totally.
clean, I'm gonna join that clean plate club, although my grandma doesn't give me a quarter anymore. Nobody's giving me quarters like I used to get when I went to her house
Isn't that
and
funny?
was a member of the Clean Plate
They were
Club.
giving
But
me quarters to stop eating. That's the quarters I would get.
Oh, gosh. Well, adding to this point, the FDA recommends consuming 2,000 calories a day, but on average, this will blow your mind. Americans are eating 3,600 calories per day. Not good for us, which is why we have a 73% obesity rate, and that's because our portion sizes have gotten bigger and the food companies have capitalized on formulating our foods to taste more exciting by adding as much salt, oil, and sugar as possible to reach a higher bliss point. And as a fallout, it addicts our brain cells and drives us to eat more of this ultra processed foods. We are literally killing ourselves with these ultra processed foods. Jamie, you
Yes.
want to weigh in on your thoughts with that and how these two different societies are faring?
Well, I mean, I think that's pretty obvious, right? We've got lots of sickness and lots of mental illness and lots
Agreed.
of societal illness on our part of the globe. So I think when we think about something that really shocked me in that documentary was, they showed a woman threading a needle
Yeah.
without glasses, and she was 94. So again, we know that every bite of processed food increases our cellular aging. And when we think about, the taking single ingredient foods by the forkful, that promotes cellular regeneration.
Mhm.
So again, when we think about what we truly need, it really is every bite of that nutrient dense food that you're eating goes towards health, and every bite, guys, it's every bite. It is not a meal or a day. It is at the bite level that you can take your health down with ultra processed or processed foods. So again, this mitochondria that are inside our cells, these energy factories, this really is what brings us closer to health, right? If we feed those
Mhm.
uh, mitochondrial function with nutrient dense foods, takes us closer to health, or if we do it with ultra processed foods that are, polluting our health in every way, it downregulates the mitochondrial function with every bite.
Yeah, that's crazy, scary, significant. It's something to pay attention to. And before I respond to what you just said, I was thinking about when earlier when you were talking about how these foods and this lifestyle don't just affect our health, but our mental health too.
Mhm.
And I was thinking about how closely related our diet is to our mental health. I mean, obviously, I'm not saying that there aren't chemical imbalances that cause mental health, but I really do think that there is some mental health issues that flourish when you have a poor diet. Not to mention just if you want to lump depression in there, I mean, nobody's going to end up being a happy camper if they're vegging out on McDonald's Happy Meals all day long. They are not going to be happy. That smile is going to turn upside down to a frowny face. But
Yeah.
I just think there's such a strong correlation between mental health and our diet.
Well, there's even more research now, which I'm learning in my journey, right? Because I'm one of the, when you look at my adrenal functioning, it's all closely connected to thyroid function. And, there is a serious link between mental illness and downregulated thyroid.
Ooh,
And also, again, the foods and the chemicals in our water supply and our food supply can severely impact our thyroid function.
wow.
And that's if we're lucky enough to be born with a functional, highly optimized, fully functioning thyroid. And if we're not, right, then we just keep doing damage to that thyroid. And the thyroid regulates every system in our body,
Mm-hmm.
endocrine system, hormones, it's not just about weight loss and weight gain. I mean, it's everything. It's heart health, it's brain health, it's everything. It's the master gland. So when we think about, a lot of times we look at like bipolar and we look at schizophrenia or we look at depression and anxiety. For sure, they're affected, right? The cellular level, they're affected by those processed foods, ultra processed foods that people are eating. However, the bigger issue is the damage the food is doing to this master gland that affects everything else in our body. So when we think about health, right, it really is not about, oh, gee, I'm gonna miss my, I don't know, Domino's or Pizza Hut pizza tonight. I'm so sad I can't have my pepperoni stuffed crust. But like, think about what you're doing. It's a cascade of issues that affect your entire body
Yeah.
because your health, right, is controlled by this master gland, and it can't get what it needs to get out of your food if you're blocking it with pollution from ultra processed stuff. So, I mean, it really is that granular. And yes, it takes years to downregulate a thyroid. But so many people in the US are walking around with an underfunctioning thyroid from birth anyway.
Yeah.
So you do even more damage long term, and eventually things can really tank.
Yeah. Yeah, and we don't have time to get into this, but what about Alzheimer's and the connection? You know, they're
Totally,
calling it diabetes
totally,
3 now. How scary is that? So
totally.
that's I don't need to I'll be 61, ooh, at the end of the week, but I already see me doing goofy, mushy brained stuff. I certainly don't need to compound those effects by living off of processed food. I need to do everything now. Particularly, it's getting more serious on making sure that I take the best care of myself I can,
Yes, yes.
which leads back into our conversation about nutrient dense food. And what's so ironic about all this is we don't really even need the scientific evidence to tell us this information. Can't we just tune into how we feel after eating processed food? It might taste good in that momentary high, but you always feel awful afterwards. Last night, case in point, I was going to a function where there was going to be served some processed food by a family member. And I knew ahead of time, I was already feeling a little weak yesterday, and I just needed to really focus in on future self, how I wanted to feel this morning. And I knew if I ate that, my stomach would kill me and I would come home depressed, upset, filled with regret and guilt. And I did not want to do that. So I filled up on my nutritious dinner before I went. I brushed my teeth, I flossed, and I literally made this hard decision in my brain that,
Easier. It's easier.
yeah, I mean, I just
Hard line.
literally drew a hard line. No, you're not going to do that. You're going to do anything else. You've had enough. And I'm going to help you so you can be happy tomorrow morning. And it's almost like I just go to this alternate state in my mind when I go there. And it's just a hard and fast decision, no negotiating. And if I would dare to start negotiating with myself, I go, nah, nope, we've made this hard line. I am not going to even cross that. And you know what? I didn't die because I missed out on some of that processed food, and I woke up so much happier this morning. And guess what? My day got off, started correctly, went to the gym, had my healthy breakfast, and I feel so much better. And that can, if I cave in, you just don't know the domino effect of how long that's going to hang around and cause another poor decision after another poor decision after another poor decision. So I got off track a little bit, but these foods were designed to be overeaten. So whenever we are end up in a situation where we do overeat, and let me say, it sometimes feels impossible to not overeat this. No judgment here. Believe me, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. And we have talked about our bodies are acting as they were designed to react around these food. But like I said, you just always end up so miserable. And compare that to how you feel physically, mentally, and emotionally when you eat clean, single ingredient foods. I'm able to go ahead and focus on other things in my day and not be distracted by all the regret and aches and pains I feel. I have never left a Mexican restaurant or a pizza parlor or Dairy Queen, not in pain. I know before I go in the door how this is going to play out and how I'm going to feel later.
Mhm.
So those types of things are just way too much fat, and my gut just cannot handle it.
So another thing that the blue zones have, right, is their strong emphasis on social circles, and they
Mhm.
call it moe. They meet often, and they sing and talk, or they get together to do creative things. And again, if any family in the area is struggling, they get together and work together to help them. So at Real Food Recovery, we have that same sort of close connection with our membership, and we have a strong support group. There are tremendous payoffs to surrounding yourself with like-minded, good people. We are connected to something bigger than ourselves. Our souls long for connection, and that really does add to longevity. Nothing to add there. It's well said.
Yeah. This is so true. In America, we are experiencing a loneliness epidemic. We need human contact and connection more than ever. We are wired to belong. Our number one need as humans is to feel a part of, and then you can fill in the blank, whatever that looks like. But our number one need as a human being is to feel connected to and a part of something, whatever it is that's bigger than ourselves. So, and so much so that loneliness can take 15 years off of your life. So the question becomes, how do you combat that? There's no pill to take for isolation, right? So the only answer is to get out there amongst others. You can find friends, you can commit to friends and spend time with friends every day. For me, I find myself in my routine seeing the same people most days, whether it's at the gym, grocery store, work, church, car repair place, gas station, or Real Food Recovery group. I'm building just little dots of relationships throughout my day wherever I go. And each place may have a different level of relationship, but it still feels familiar to me and it fills me up on the inside. I like seeing these same people everywhere I go. It gives me a sense of security in this world that I live in. And I think we are most comfortable with what's familiar. Jamie, do
Yeah.
you have an opinion on a socialization bucket and
Yeah. I think
how
it's
it's
vitally important. The last thing that we want to point out is this remarkable community, right, in the Blue Zone, is that they need to do something they feel is contributing to the world. And I really
Mhm.
love this part, this whole sense of purpose.
Yeah.
And they have really around us, they connect their sense of purpose to spiritual health
Yeah.
and to know their values.
Mhm.
This really coincides with our branches of recovery at Real Food Recovery. We place high value on purpose, spirituality, and values as well. And in Okinawa, no one retires. They keep their mind and body engaged. It gives them a reason to wake up. And yeah, so this is what I think. I don't have any plans of retirement.
Me
And it's
neither.
not because I want to make up for lost financial time, and that's some of it. But it's more just I have seen I mean, retirement is like a crisis.
Yeah.
Everyone,
Ugh.
everyone that I see that's retired has some form of crisis. They might not tell you, but they kind of sit there like, okay, what do I do now? And
Right.
there's very few retired folks that I see that are on their own, like not part of another retirement community, not part of another, maybe a small village. If these people are like out in the world living in a suburb with other groups of people that are not retired, let's say that they have to kind of make their way, they have to work a lot harder to find their community. The successful retired folks that I've seen, meaning successful, like they're happy, they're
Mhm.
healthy, they are they are that way because they have a community around them. So either they're in a
Mhm.
55 and over, or they're in a 65 and over community that they have tons of activities. They see their neighbors all the time. They get together for different events and different functions. They have a strong sense of community and a strong sense of purpose in that community. So I believe that the it pays to have and think about it. When you're in school, that's what they give you. They give you from the minute you step in the door in pre-K all the way through college, your senior year, they give you a sense of community and a sense of purpose, which is why there's this phenomenon called the midlife mid-20s crisis, right? And it's
Mm.
technically called the quarter life crisis. And these early 20 somethings are just totally lost, and they have no idea what to do because for literally 15 years of their life or more, their community and sense of purpose has been totally structured for them. And now they flail around and don't know what to do. So it's really important to have a community that you've created around you and a sense of purpose that you have in there. And when you retire, I think it's even more important because I've seen many retired people go into deep
Oh,
depression.
sure. Oh, sure. You've maybe heard me tell my joke about, I always tell my husband, he can retire if he wants, but I don't care what he does, but he can't stay here. He has to get up and leave the house every morning, and I tell him he can come back around 3 or after, but you literally have to have a reason to get up. Someone in the world needs to have the information to make you feel vital. And when you were talking about, I'd never heard about that quarter crisis, but I was thinking about people that have spent 15 years in this group setting, learning and education. You're not just with people, but you're also with like-minded people, goal-oriented people.
Yeah,
So you share there's like an extra layer of connection that
totally.
everybody around me is doing what I'm doing. I never thought about that, but that makes so much sense. And when you're thrown out into the work world, it's on a much less scale and a much less intimate, because when you're in school, you're talking and sharing on all kinds of levels all day long. So I thank you for sharing that with me. I'd never heard of this, but definitely with retired people, nothing scares me more than the idea of being retired and, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Because boredom terrifies me, and especially somebody that fights a food addiction, because boredom is like my number one trigger. Like, oh, I know what I can do if I'm bored. I know what I can do for excitement. But definitely people that retire, they need to do more than just take up space. And we want to live in a way that we give back in meaningful ways for fulfillment. We get so much more from giving than receiving. Purpose gives a sense of direction and can help. I think it helps people live longer. I really do. So truly, a life without purpose has no meaning. And I will tell you that when Jamie and I started this podcast, which morphed into our online recovery community, it took my life's purpose up several notches. So I don't know, Jamie, do you want to weigh in? Any thoughts about purpose?
Yeah, I would just say it's critical. It really is critical, and it's something that I have seen it play out in others' lives. I've seen it play out in my own life, and it's something that is, we can create purpose for ourselves, or it can be we can be guided into it. But either way, I think it's critical.
Don't you think it invites joy? I mean, isn't it like one of the biggest things that invites joy?
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, good conversation about that. But the last point we will end on is that studies show that this is a good one. If your 3 closest friends are obese, you will be obese as well. It's actually contagious. So Blue Zones left us with the message to get yourself into the right tribe. Everything they teach and preach to live a longer, healthier, happier life is exactly the same philosophy at Real Food Recovery, and aligns with what we encourage people to work on, whether they are in recovery or just wanting to live a good life.
Yeah. So we know that genetically, we're genetically engineered to really crave those salt, sugar, and fat tastes. And we also have that desire to, really be sedentary. Really, it's really comes down to, it's not being sedentary as much as it is conserving energy. And so when we think about living in this place of ease and this place of excess where the food is all around us, we don't have to hunt for it anymore. We don't have to go searching for it, foraging for it. We become victims to our surroundings if we're not careful. And again, we can change this through awareness, and we can commit to move more naturally and have a positive outlook on life, reduce stress, and be part of a faith-based community, to get rest, convalesce, have a healthy social circle, invite purpose, and make family a priority. When we think about, having these whole single ingredient foods making up the majority of your diet, looking at how to eat for fullness, not just for what your plate looks like, making sure that you take time to spend time spiritually, in gratitude, all of these things are just critically important to overall good health.
I agree. And if you want more information about what we do at Real Food Recovery, you can find us at realfoodrecovery4u.com. That's the number 4 and the letter U. So thanks for tuning into this. And we look forward to talking about more interesting topics that will help you have more purpose, creativity, and vitality in your life. So we are going to move on to listener questions. Jamie, you want to take the first one?
Yes, a listener says, I don't have access to live in any of the blue zones. Can I still live to 100? So I'm not a fortune teller. I have no idea. So I would say set yourself up for success and join Real Food Recovery, and we'll help you get there.
Good answer. The next one is, how big of an emphasis do they put on their foods in each of these zones? So they're definitely aware, and this is definitely all centered around single ingredient foods, but the difference is they live to eat, not that they eat to live, not live to eat, like so many in America. I know I am very guilty of that myself at times. It is part of their day, but their lives are so full of enriching activities. It's just a small part of their focus. In each of these zones, you see a very active community, from gathering in the park to playing horseshoes or pickleball or walking to church or gardening or herding cattle or just singing with their family. Their lives are just filled with movement and filling those dopamine needs through these wholesome activities. And I love seeing those communities. I don't live in a community where I'm going to be herding cattle or, out playing horseshoes in my community neighborhood, but I do see where movement is just such a big natural part of their everyday lives, and that has got to make a big difference.
Totally. I agree. Next question. I know you said there's a strong emphasis on connection with family and friends for life satisfaction, but I'm estranged from my family and have difficulty making friends. Do I just accept this? So again, we have times, some of us have times, and I know I have in my life, where you're away from your family logistically, or you're geographically separated, or if you have estranged family members, and I have both. So it's important to be intentional about getting out there and finding like-minded people. It really is important. It really is important.
Agree. Last one, there's a big emphasis on movement in this docu-series. I don't have time in my day to get to the gym. It makes me feel guilty and overwhelmed. I'm not getting in a workout every day, which only makes my stress worse. So all this information is actually making me feel worse. Well, we totally get what you're saying. And guess what? I'm not sure if any of these areas were committed to gym memberships. So that's not a problem. Americans spend billions on unused gym memberships each year. So that being said, the biggest payoff was the simple everyday movement they incorporated in their lives. It wasn't even necessarily aerobic activity. So for us in our modern day society, park further away from the door, take the stairs, ask the kids or dog if they want to walk around the block after dinner and count how many cars you pass. Make it a game to see if you can beat yesterday's score. Get a standing desk, walk to someone's office in your building versus sending an email. Pick up sticks in the lawn, pull a few weeds, or even folding laundry and doing dishes. Just keep moving as often as possible, and that will add up during your day just to have an active lifestyle. So anything else you want to share before we close today, Jamie?
No, nothing to share. Great job.
Good. We enjoyed having you today. And again, I'm going to say, if you want to find out more about us, you can find us at realfoodrecovery4u.com, the number 4, the letter U, and hope to see you next time, guys. See you later. Bye-bye.
Take care.